Let's begin today with a quote. It's been said that touch leaves a lingering haptic trail in memory, like the glitter stream a child with sparklers leaves in the dark.
Oh, I like that.
Dr. David Engelman. So, can relationships survive without physical affection and touch? Well, after listening to today's episode, we think that you'll agree with us that they really don't. Physical touch is a language of its own, and it fosters connection, it increases trust and teamwork, and it improves our overall physical and mental well-being. That's what's up next here on Master Your Marriage.
Welcome back to another episode. If this is your first time joining the show, welcome. And we thank you for being here with us. Make sure that while you're here, you hit that subscribe button because we drop a new episode every Wednesday and you wouldn't want to miss it.
That's right. Now, Robert and I have had this really funny 32-year banter over who said, "I love you" first.
You did.
Oh, now you actually agree with me?
Well, maybe I did.
You've forgotten which side you're on now.
Yeah, I forget. I can't remember which argument I'm supposed to be holding up.
Up until 30 seconds ago, he has always claimed that title. Whereas I have always known the truth that it was me who said it first.
Oh, that's funny. Truth be told, we both retold and had this disagreement so many times that neither one of us is really likely to remember the accuracy of that event at this point.
Right. But I do remember many of the other details about that night. So let me paint a picture for you. We had just gone out on a date and we drove down to Oceanside Harbor, I think it was, or near the Oceanside Harbor after a date night. And we went down to, just watch the waves in the dark. And we held hands as we walked down to this beautiful moon and the moonlit beach. And then we snuggled in close because it was a little chilly. I think it was February or March or something like that. So we snuggled in close to keep warm as we sat there on the sand, listening to the waves. And there was this constant touching, right? Physical connection, right?
Yeah,
holding
absolutely.
hands, snuggling, touching. And that was a really beautiful night.
Yeah, that was fun. And as you remember back to the early days of your relationship, do you remember the role that this physical affection and contact played in your relationship? Let your mind drift back to a specific time early in your relationship. And I want you to recall this electrifying, soothing touch of being able to contact one another's skin.
And we're talking about not sex, right? We're talking about just physical touch.
Yep.
Can you guys remember that? Can you remember that touch? Physical touch is amazing. It really is a language of its own. Maybe you can remember all the things that you used to be able to communicate to this person you were dating, this person you were falling in love with. Maybe you can remember all the things you used to be able to communicate to them through touch. Touch might have been how you tested for responsiveness to see if he was interested in you.
Yeah, just a little stroke of the hand or something.
Maybe you're sitting in the movie theater and you let your pinky finger sort of brush against his pinky finger to see if he would reciprocate and hold your hand.
Yeah, that's all communication, right? And do you remember a time when you had a bad day and you said, "Can you just hold me"?
Yeah.
Do you remember having those times?
I do. Can you just hold me? I had a bad day.
Yeah. Do you remember how you used to, in your relationship, do you remember how you used to just playfully touch and tickle and tease each other, or how you could express gratitude with like a hug or maybe just a touch somewhere on the shoulder or something?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Through touch alone and no verbal communication at all, we have the ability to communicate all kinds of emotions and messages to each other.
Absolutely, yeah.
In fact, researchers such as DePuy University psychologist Matthew Hertenstein found that we have the innate ability to decode emotions through touch. So in his studies, he had volunteers attempt to communicate to a list of emotions. So we had a list of emotions there and had people try to communicate these emotions to a blindfolded stranger.
How does that even work?
Just through touch.
Yeah.
Just through touch. So it's like, here, can you communicate anger to this blindfolded person just through touch?
Blindfold stranger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so even though they were complete strangers, these people were able to communicate anger, fear, disgust, love, sympathy, happiness, sadness, all these emotions with accuracy rates as high as 78%.
That's better than chance. What is
I
chance?
think that's 7 times higher than chance,
Oh, man,
right?
absolutely.
And again, this was with a blindfolded stranger. So this even shocked the researchers. I think they thought at best it would be maybe 25% accuracy.
So, as you think about it, if touch is a language, it seems we come hardwired knowing how to use this language, right? Not only is it an accurate way to communicate feelings, it's a really fast way to communicate.
It is.
If you're close enough to touch, it's often the easiest way to communicate something to someone. And Charla sometimes will communicate that to me if I'm talking too fast. She just put her hand on my leg. And I already know what that means.
Yeah.
Would it surprise you to know, and here's a kind of an interesting stat, that more than half of your brain is devoted to processing this sensory experience in which we're living in. And much of that sensory receptivity focuses on tactile discrimination or touch.
Wow. That means a lot of our brain is being used for the purpose of being able to feel touch.
Right. And communicate, honestly.
Right. And when you think about it, it's really not that surprising that we are so innately hardwired to be this way, actually, because we begin receiving tactile signals even before birth.
Right.
Right. Even as the vibrations of our mother's heartbeat are amplified through the amniotic fluid.
I mean, how many of us have talked to our baby when they've been
Totally.
right? I want him to know my voice when he comes out or he or she comes out.
That's right. And interestingly, of all the senses, when we're born, of all the senses, touch is the most highly developed at birth.
It continues to play a huge part in childhood for most of us. And we probably can remember that soothing touch that could be provided, a healthy, safe touch from adults in our lives, a touch that would soothe our hurts or ows, right? Let us know that we're loved. We all ran to our mom or that caregiver in our life when we were hurt and not really hurt, but when we felt like we were hurt.
Yeah, I think that that's a time in a life when never, again, are we touched as much as we are as a child. I mean, that's so important to us to be able to receive that as a child because of that soothing nature.
Yeah. And so much so, touch is a fundamental need. And in the 1950s, a scientist named Harry Hallow performed a series of sort of haunting, controversial studies that have become classics in the fields of neuroscience. And it was titled The Nature of Love 5. And they demonstrated that baby rhesus monkeys exhibit a primal need for touch, overwhelmingly in this study, choosing the caress of a terry cloth mothered surrogate doll over food, sometimes even to their detriment.
So
they just wanted to be held.
They would rather have a fake person to touch than they would food.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's how touch is so ingrained for us. And you think about these stories that we hear about babies being adopted from other countries and their failure to thrive because no one holds them.
Right. We're going to talk more about that in adults here in just a little bit too.
Yeah.
And what you mentioned about the monkeys, that's also been shown in human studies as well. For example, there was, I remember one study where, remember when you took your babies to the pediatrician and they would take a blood sample?
Yeah.
And
they would poke a hole in their heel.
Yeah. The little lance, their heel to draw blood. Well, in one study, these children who received that soothing contact from a parent, that tactile touch during that heel lance procedure, they exhibited a lower cardiovascular response to being poked.
Yeah, I mean, we've all done that, right? When you take your child, if they're having a blood draw or something, you hold their hand, right?
And there was also a study with women.
Yeah. So a similar study in adult women where they used functional MRI, or they're mapping the brain to see what areas light up, that to measure sort of this threat, or this danger sensation that they had. And Cohen and researchers told the women in the study that they were going to get an electric shock, and so they were, a little bit nervous. And so they had two different individuals. So they held the hand of a stranger when they were anticipating the shock. I don't think the shock ever came, but they held it, and then they measured the brain, the functional MRI, to see what areas light up, like how much of activation there was. And then they had them hold the hand of their husbands or somebody that they loved.
Right.
And they noted that it had such a soothing effect that the area of activation on the functional MRI was so much lower than none at all. So I think it was a 3-stage study: electric shock, nobody holding their hand, a stranger, and then someone that they loved.
Yeah. So there's really no question that touch is a language, and it's one that we are really quite adept at speaking and also understanding.
Absolutely,
It's something
yeah.
that we're innately born with.
Yeah.
And now here we're going to transition to talking about marriage, of course, but touch is an essential part of our emotionally committed relationships.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely, right?
We sometimes, this is a funny question, but we've been asked this when we've been interviewed on other podcasts before, like, how important is sex in a marriage?
Yeah.
Like, or, can a marriage survive?
Can it survive
without sex?
What's a sexless marriage look like or something?
Yeah. And
but
so,
I love how you changed the question.
Well,
maybe the first time it was asked.
Depends, right?
Yeah.
I think the first time we were asked it, well, it really depends on the two people who were involved. Yes, it can survive for some people, depending on who's in that relationship. For most, probably not. But a relationship is far more likely to survive a sexless marriage than it is a touchless marriage.
Yeah, I don't think a touchless marriage would work, right?
Right.
So relationships are not likely to survive without touch. And touch starvation is a real issue that affects many people around the world. I mean, just think about how bad COVID was, where people couldn't connect and touch.
Right.
There's a lot that came from that.
Well, loneliness went through the roof.
Yeah. Just as a lack of food and water have a detrimental effect on your human body, so does the lack of affection.
Yes.
And people who are deprived of touch, less happy, more lonely, more likely to experience depression and worse health overall in general. And we saw that sort of played out during the COVID pandemic.
Yeah. And people, I think, are, there really is a crisis of touch starvation.
There is.
Right.
Yeah.
In relationships. And then those who are, for whatever reason, for other reasons as well, elderly.
Yeah.
People who are not in relationships, people who live alone.
Yeah. And I like the terms touch starvation, because we think of starvation as sort of something that really is detrimental to our health and to our body as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And if we play that a little bit further, we realize that this absence of touch in our lives and our relationships. So, or you're going to starve your relationship of the nutrients it needs in order to survive and thrive and grow.
I love that. Yeah, so true. We wouldn't starve ourselves of water or food.
But we would starve our relationship, which is this thing that needs to be fed and nourished.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And these relationships that you talked about that, are starving for touch, for affection, they also have obviously have a lower relationship satisfaction, but they've also been shown to, these individuals have, mood and anxiety disorders. They have more immune system disorders, and they're also more likely to have alexithymia, which is a condition that impairs their ability to be able to even interpret or express emotions.
Oh, that sounds really hard.
So, yeah, I mean, touch is such an important thing that we probably don't think about enough or talk about enough. But it is nourishment for our relationship. And that's why we said earlier, your relationship may be able to survive a sexless marriage, but probably not a touchless.
Not one without physical contact of any kind, yeah.
So touch is the basic language of bonding. But just how much bonding? There's some research about that.
Yeah. So there's some interesting research from the University of Illinois. Michael Krause and his team wanted to find out what physical touch did to the performance of individuals and teams. So they tracked and studied 294 players and 30 NBA teams, so 294 basketball players. Mm. And they had a whole team of researchers that counted how many times each player initiated any physical contact, such as chest bumps, a high five, back slaps, knuckles, like whatever it is. And then they looked at the cooperation and trust that was then developed between the individual players on a team. Mm-hmm. And the trust being, can I pass the ball? Can I make the play? And all those types of things. Yeah. It's an amazing research article. I think it was 208 to 210. And they found, the study revealed that the more on-court touching, the more touching that teams did with one another earlier in the season, the better they performed individually and as a team. And so by the end of the season, Michael Krause, the lead researcher, said, "We're very surprised that touch predicted performance across all NBA teams. Basketball players sometimes don't have time to say an encouraging word to a teammate. Instead, they develop this incredible repertoire of touch to communicate quickly and accurately to their teammates.
So not only did it improve trust between the players, it improved cooperation between the players, but it also made them perform better.
Yeah, and so let's stretch that out again, as I like to, I'm the captain of metaphors here, right? Let's stretch that into the team that you and your spouse or you and your emotionally committed partner are developing, right? You're pulling together, you're working together. Is there a way that you can see, taking the same data, that you can communicate with touch? Like,
right.
Not only is it, and we're going to talk about the benefits of physical touch, but talk about just team performance, how the two of you work together to solve problems.
Yeah, that word cooperation, right?
Right.
Are we an alliance? I mean, I think of a team, I think of alliance. You have to work together as a team, and that's what we are on the court, but that's what we are at home in our relationships.
Yeah. So if we've developed this repertoire of touching, encouraging as we touch,
yeah,
right, and celebrating our wins, now we're working together. We're becoming seamless. That's just the team aspect.
Yeah. So this research that you're talking about with basketball players, it really just echoes all the other research that we've mentioned today, plus lots and lots of other research that's out there that tell us what we really already intuitively know, which is that trust or touch is vital to trust.
Yeah.
It's vital to cooperation. It's vital to human connection. And in long-term committed relationships, couples need that, but yet they tend to get complacent and they tend to, over time, start to touch each other less and less.
Yeah.
As
a
we go
little
through.
a little touch starvation.
Right. We start out touching each other all the time, it kind of plateaus, and then it tends to wane.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how we can prioritize physical affection a little bit more in our long-term committed relationships.
Let's dig into that.
Strategies for how we can improve this problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we're going to suggest first that you listen to this episode with your partner, right? And then sit down together and create touch points.
Touch points. I saw what you did there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That are part of your daily rituals of connection, right? So if you've been a longtime listener here, you know that we preach about the importance of rituals all the time. And when we use the word ritual, if you haven't heard us, if this is your first time here, we use the word ritual because it's something that we consistently do regularly, repeatedly, and often day in and day out, week after week, year after year.
Yeah. And since we know that happier couples touch more, we believe that physical affection should really be a part of your daily ritual. We're going to give you some suggestions on how to do that in a moment. But equally, if not more important, is how you respond
yes.
to your partner's touch. A touch, even the slightest touch, really is a bid for connection. And we can meet those bids. We can meet a bid for affection by ignoring them, rejecting them, or accepting them. So even more important than a daily checklist, like, oh, I have to do this and oh, I have to do that, is making sure that we're responding to our partner's attempts to connect through touch. The stronger we reciprocate, the more likely the couple is to report a deep connection, intimacy, and overall satisfaction in the relationship. Though that said, here's a rundown of our favorite rituals that involve physical touch.
Okay, so here we go.
Which ones are our favorites?
All right, so let's start out by maybe my favorite, which is sharing a 6-second kiss every day.
You like that, but while I'm counting to 6 while I'm kissing you, it seems to ruin the moment.
Well, if you're like 1, 2, right?
Yeah, it's not 6 separate kisses.
It's 6-second kiss.
6-second kisses.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And why? Oh, anyway, actually, did you know that men actually statistically live longer when they kiss their wives goodbye before they leave in the morning?
Are you serious?
Yeah, like 4 years longer.
That's even better. Mm-hmm. Now I have a reason.
Right. And that's just
other
like
than
your
I just want that
ordinary
6-second kiss. Yeah.
peck on the lips.
That's just a little peck on the cheek?
Yeah. But why do we suggest a 6-second? Not a 5, not a 4, not a 3, but why 6?
I know why.
And it's because that's when oxytocin gets secreted by both partners.
The love hormone. The bonding hormone.
Bonding hormone. So that's going to promote this sense of safety, of connection, of bonding.
Trust.
Right? So you could think of that. I like what Robert said earlier about the nourishment for your relationship, like we need food, like we need water, you could think of this like your daily vitamin,
Yeah, I
right?
like that.
Your daily vitamin that helps you
Except for it
to live
tastes
longer.
better than the daily vitamins.
I don't know. You told me I tasted like bacon yesterday.
I don't. Yeah, this is a bad thing.
maybe I'll cut that out.
Yeah, I don't think you can cut that one out. We'll leave that one in. That was
Well,
too good. Because you did, I don't know, maybe you smelled a little bit like bacon. I don't know.
maybe it was my new face cream.
It was great. I loved it.
Maybe you want to make a ritual to do this 6-second kiss every morning before leaving for work in the morning.
Yeah, we do it.
We do. What's another one?
Another one. So we're going to call this the 20-second hug. Why 20 seconds?
20-second hug.
Do you ask? Why 20 seconds?
Maybe it has to do with the same reason the 6-second.
Yep.
Kiss.
20 seconds is when both partners start to release oxytocin. Again, the love hormone, the bonding hormone, the trusting hormone. And this creates a sense of safety and connection. Perhaps this could be a ritual that you might want to do every day when you get home after work. So it's one of our favorite rituals. We always connect when I come home from work or when she comes home.
Number 3, hold hands. Hold hands more. Go for a walk and hold hands. Hold hands.
We're in the new studio and I'm feeling like I can't reach over and touch your hand. It's sort of doing an episode on touch and I can't reach over and hold her hand.
One of my favorite things to do is to go for a walk and together. And sometimes that'll just be, we have a trail that's out from our house and we'll go for a walk and hold hands. Or if we're on vacation, my absolute favorite thing to do is do a beach walk for somewhere tropical.
Get more miles walking on vacation than I do anywhere else.
We do.
It's good.
I find, and I think you'll find as well, that when you touch more, your mood is actually uplifted for days. You start to feel calmer. Your nervous system is soothed. So definitely hold hands more.
Yeah, I think so. Number 4, give back rubs. Give back rubs, right? Just a back rub, not on anything else rub. Right? Just looking to connect.
Just a back rub.
Just a back rub, right? And then number 5 is create a ritual for how you say goodnight.
Yeah.
Right? And make touch part of it, right? If you and your partner like to pray at night, hold hands, right? While you're saying your prayers. Maybe you fall asleep snuggling or touching your feet or something like that. I know that depends on if somebody has cold feet in here, but they usually find me.
Yes, my feet are always cold and my feet are always touching your feet at night. Maybe it's even when they're not cold because I like that. I always find you at night when we're sleeping.
Yeah. So a couple words of caution here, right? Again, don't make touch dependent on sex. That's why I said it's a back rub only, right?
And this is a big thing. I talk to women all the time that talk about how much they miss physical touch.
Oh.
I just miss it so much. I just miss it. But it just, every time he would never touch me that it didn't have the conditions of something else. And, if it leads to sex, great, it leads to sex. But let me tell you from somebody who is my love language is touch. Like my love strategy, my love language, it is absolutely touch. And a couple things with that is that if it feels conditional, especially for me, with that being my love language, I get very touch starved very quickly and I shut down wanting to have sex. Anytime I start to feel needed in a way where I have to provide that and it feels obligatory, it puts it into that energy of obligation. It doesn't make it fun anymore.
Right.
So just make sure that there's a lot of non-sexual touch and that the only time you're touching isn't just when you're having sex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the other thing with being the love language person who is touch, my time period of when I start to feel starved for touch is very quick. So I am very sensitive to long periods of time. And for me, that could be 24 hours of not being touched in some way.
Sometimes I feel like it's 24 minutes.
Right. I think it probably is. But, just be aware that if your partner's love language, their love strategy is touch, that they will feel starved for touch very quickly.
Yeah. And your relationship could then start to lack the nutrients it needs.
Yes.
Yeah. So
there was one more thing that we wanted to mention when it came to like words of caution.
Well, if you're someone who, for you in the past, touch has not been safe, you may need to start much slower, right? And go back, start slower, and then go back and listen to episodes number 50 and number 36.
Yeah, those were two that we did on, if you've had a bad experience in the past, if your childhood experiences did not lead you to linking physical touch with safety for some reason, and there might be some additional healing that needs to happen.
You have to
So
go back and
go
sort
back
of
and listen to
rebuild that
those
one.
two
Yeah.
episodes, episode 50 and 36, because I think those will help you with that.
And one of the things, just to, sort of summarize this, we talked about the basketball study about cooperation and team players and individual support. Doctors who touch their patient are seen as more caring.
Mm-hmm. Waitresses get higher tips.
Waitresses get higher tips. Dang it. And there was one more that I was going to use, but, and we talk about 97% of communication is nonverbal. 93% of communication is nonverbal. So what percentage of that communication do you feel is touch, right? A lot. And you can communicate a lot with your partner, and it doesn't have to be sexual. And the whole sort of impetus for this episode was just to realize that if you want a stronger teamwork framework for your relationship, start to just incorporate touch. We like to use the word ritual because ritual just means it's something that you do, not something that you occasionally do. This is what you do. I have a ritual for how you brush your teeth and whether you put your left sock on first or your right sock. Start to develop these rituals that will nurture your relationship when it comes to touch.
Feed your relationship.
Yeah, I like that. So once again, we're grateful for all of you, and we just ask that you continue to support the show. And the algorithm depends on your ratings and your comments. And for us to make a bigger impact to help more couples, we really need your continued support. So if you haven't, would you please show a little love, leave us a 5-star review and a comment.
And more importantly, as always, if there is someone in your life that needs help in their relationship that might benefit from this episode or from any of these episodes, would you kindly share it with them?
And of course, as always, be kind to each other this week. Take care of each other. Remember, it's the small things done often that make the biggest impact.
Until next time.